Hello there, and welcome into another episode of the Fasting Guy podcast. I am the Fasting Guy. Most people just call me Brett. I'm a guy that spends at least 25 hours a week doing research on weight loss and metabolic health. I look at all the latest papers, literature, the latest studies. I've also lived a life of obesity, weight loss failure, and weight loss success. I've lost 60 pounds and failed due to an injury. I lost 80 pounds and failed due to a hospital stay. I lost 125 pounds and then failed due to debilitating depression and grief. And now I'm losing weight more effectively than I ever did before. My goal is to give you research, my personal experience, and the motivation you need to achieve your health and weight loss goals. In today's podcast, you're going to learn exactly how much protein you should be eating every day to lose weight. Protein is a big subject, especially in the ketogenic low carb world. You've got people that fall on the low protein side, the moderate protein side, and the higher protein side. Let me first say thank you for listening to the ads that played into this podcast. This offsets the cost of my podcast hosting and equipment and time. Not making money off this podcast, certainly not anywhere near getting rich, but the ads help offset the cost. And I do appreciate you listening to them. I know they can be annoying. That being said, if you would like an ad-free, fluff-free, trimmed down, just the meat and potatoes, pardon the weight loss pun, a version of the podcast, you can become a patron. Just like these great folks, Randy Decker, Angie Richardson, Eric Barnhart, Cindy Carr, Bessie Williams, Bobby Houston. Those guys all come up with a few bucks a month to help me put this on and not incur cost, and it means the world to me. As a result, they get their name mentioned in the podcast as a tip of the hat. They get the podcast 4 days before anybody else. They also get it on a private type platform, so they can go to it. They can also comment on it, and I can comment back, and we can have a conversation. They go to the front of the line if they have questions about weight loss, and they're forever in my heart. If you want to know more about that, maybe consider being a patron. Maybe the podcast has been valuable to you or helpful to you. losewithmason.com, losewithmason.com, losewithmason.com. Now, quickly, social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I use Facebook and Instagram the most, probably Facebook the most of all. And it's all Fasting Guy Podcast. So just do a search for Fasting Guy Podcast and you will find us on there. All right. Real quick, let me ask you a big favor real quick. Would you consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcast? That tells Apple, hey, folks, get some benefit from this podcast. He's doing a good job. He's providing solid information. When people search for weight loss, they search for fasting, they search for keto, they search for low carb. Send them to this guy. They'll probably enjoy what he has to offer. That would mean the world to me. 5-star reviews make my entire life. How much protein should you be eating? So I've evolved on protein. When I first got into keto, 90% of people were talking about you got to keep protein moderate. And for men, that would usually be in the 80 to 90 gram a day range. For women, it would be probably in the 60 to 80 gram range, depending on how big the woman was. Since then, it's evolved, and you now have a split on this whole issue between a group of people who advocate that same amount and a whole other group of people who have some pretty compelling research and data that the protein should be higher. I have to admit, I bucked this. When I first went keto, I bucked it. I bucked this protein thing because of a lot of the information that was out there. But I have now tried it both ways. I have lost a lot of weight and been successful on a ketogenic diet that was very moderate in protein, around 80 grams a day. And then I've been very successful losing weight on a low carb / keto-ish kind of diet where the protein is cranked up. And I got to tell you, having done it both ways, the high protein butter is way better. It's much more satiating. I have much more energy, I feel. I feel stronger. I can eat, and when I eat, I feel stuffed. I feel full. I feel like I have crammed myself full of food like there's no tomorrow. And as a person who's addicted to food, and you're probably one of those people, you know that feeling. You eat to achieve that feeling. You die for that feeling. You're like, I want to eat till I'm full. And protein does that. And not only does it do it in the short term, like as soon as you're eating or as soon as you're through eating, you feel that. Not only do you get it then, that full effect lasts for hours and hours and hours and hours. And where this really comes in handy is at the end of the day when you have your last meal, you're full till bedtime. It's just not a deal. It's not an issue. And then when you wake up the next day, there's no difference in how you feel between the high fat version of keto / low carb and the high protein version. So that's pretty equal. The waking up the next morning thing, you're going to feel about the same no matter which way you go. The difference comes when you're eating and how you feel when you're eating and how you feel after. Now, I want to tell you, fat was satiating. When I was really high fat keto and loving that diet and losing a lot of weight on it, I did feel satiated, but the effect was subtle. I don't know how to describe it, but it was a very subtle effect. Like you just kind of feel, I feel okay. I'm not really, my head's not pounding with cravings and my mind isn't going crazy. I'm just kind of on a even kind of kill thing. So it was that kind of a satiating. With the high protein, it's my gut is full. I feel like I've stuffed myself like the beast that I am. I have achieved my goal today. It was just to fill myself with nutrition and food. And it's a very animalistic, I'm full feeling. And that satisfies me. That satisfies my brain. It satisfies my animalistic nature. It satisfies my lifelong need to cram food down my mouth. And it does it all with the exact same results as the high fat. In other words, you're still keeping the carbs low. You're still getting the crazy weight loss effects. And then on another plus side, which it gets into the research aspect of it, you're actually sparing even more muscle. And it actually makes it where you can build muscle while being in a deficit, which is very hard to do. So if you're a person that's trying to lose weight, and maybe you're doing some weights, which I encourage everybody, do a little bit of walking, 30 minutes or so of walking a day. And then if you're able to, do some resistance training, because the larger your muscles get, the higher of a calorie burning machine you are, which is going to help you losing weight. And when you increase the protein, it helps with that. So all that having been said, the question is, how much protein? I don't understand. And it can be confusing because there's a lot of it out there. You hear things bounced around like 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, or 1 gram per kilogram of lean body mass, or 1.2 you'll hear bounced around sometimes, 1.5 you'll hear 2, you'll hear all these numbers. And I'm here to tell you that I've tried them all. I've experimented, and not only experimented, but talked to other people that I've talked with to help them lose weight and had them experiment and try different things. And from my own personal experience and from all the literature that I've read, and then all the information I can find from experts that I highly revere, probably Dr. Ted Naiman being the one I probably put at the top of that list, it comes in at around 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So my first deal with all this was, is it 1.5 grams per kilogram of your ideal body weight or your lean body mass? Or is it 1.5 grams per kilogram of your total overall body weight? There's a little bit of confliction out there. And I can tell you hands down, it's going to be 1.5 grams per kilogram of your body weight. So if you are 300 pounds, that's the number you're going to use. If you're 400 pounds, that's the number you're going to use. I'll tell you where this really helps a lot is the heavier you are, the more you're going to love eating high protein. Now, you're going to find it challenging. You're going to find it very challenging. I've talked about this a little bit in other episodes of the podcast about how can you get the protein in, and we'll talk about that a little bit in this one coming up in my tips. It can be difficult in the beginning, but the cool thing about it is once you learn how to get that protein level up high, pretty much everything else will stay the same. You already know about having the veggies, and you already know about keeping the carbs low, and you already understand this other stuff. Probably you do. Now, I'm assuming most people listening to this have tried low carb or tried keto or maybe doing that now. If you're not, you will figure all that as well. And we'll have tips on all this for you coming up. But the heavier you are, basically eating protein is like eating carbs in terms of calories. There's about 4 calories per gram of protein and carbs. So for a gram of each, you're going to get about 4 calories. So you can really pound the protein back because the calorie content is very low, but it is so filling. It's just so filling. So let's jump into it a little bit, right? To figure out how much you need to be eating, it's a very simple formula. It's not hard to figure out. You can ask Siri, you can ask Alexa, or you can just use the calculator that's on your phone to do these simple calculations. So if you want to take some notes, open your notepad on your phone or grab you don't even need a large piece of paper, just grab you a sheet of paper and a pen or a pencil. And if you don't have that, too bad, pause the podcast, or you can listen to it and then rewind to this point and write this stuff down after the fact. So you first need to know your kilograms, right? Because the formula is 1.5 grams of protein per every 1 kilogram of body weight. So you need to know how many kilograms you are. Now, I do have listeners over in the UK. I have some listeners in Australia. I actually have a lot of listeners in Australia for some reason. G'day, mate. You gotta say, g'day, mate. I don't know. I can't do it. Sorry about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend my Australian listeners. I love you guys. But if you're an American, you don't know much about kilograms. You just don't. I remember them trying to teach it when I was in school, and then they basically just gave up on it. I'm like, yeah, what the heck? It's very easy, though. You just take the pounds that you weigh, and you divide it by 2.2. So if you weigh 250 pounds, 300 pounds, whatever, take that number and then divide it by 2.2. Okay, that's going to give you a new number. So take that new number, that's your weight in kilograms, and you want to multiply that number times 1.5. Okay? So what does that look like? I'll run through some of these calculations here in the podcast so you can get an example. So let's say you're a 300-pound person. 300 divided by 2.2 is 136. You take 136 and multiply it times 1.5 and you get 204. So if you're a 300-pound person, you need to be eating about 204 grams of protein. This is about the range I'm in, give or take a little. If you're a 250, now people are freaking out by that. Yeah, I started out at 410 pounds. That's a big old boy. Still big. Still got a way to go. But we're plowing through it. Better than ever. If you're a 250-pound person, it's 250 divided by 2.2. That is 113. You take the 113, multiply it times 1.5, and you get 169 grams of protein. So as you can see, this is way more than that old keto 80, 90 gram stuff that those keto people talk. It's a lot more protein. A 200-pound person, 200 divided by 2.2 equals 90. 90 times 1.5 is 135 grams of protein. So I hope that those examples help you understand the formula for finding out how many grams of protein you need to eat today. Now, you have that number, and a lot of you may be thinking, but now what? How do I get the 150 grams? How do I know it's 150 grams? Or how do I know that it's 169? How do I know? How do I get there? How do I make this work in a realistic, real life basis? So I have tips for that. And if you'll be patient with me and give me 30 seconds, I will tell you all in great detail how to implement this starting today into your health and weight loss diet plan. All right, here we go guys. How do you work this protein goal? So you've figured out how much protein in grams you need to eat. How do you implement this into your lifestyle? So the first thing you need to understand is, and a lot of people confuse this, 150 grams of chicken breast isn't 150 grams of protein, right? Most people are like, well, chicken breast is protein, so I just need 150 grams of chicken breast. No. Chicken breast isn't all protein. It's other things. It has a little bit of fat, has a little bit of water, this, that, and the other. Now, using chicken breast as an example, this is pretty much one of the leanest forms of protein meat you can eat, but it isn't 100% protein. Only a certain percentage of it is. Not the entire chicken breast is protein. That's why you really got to use something like MyFitnessPal, which is completely free. Get it on your phone or tablet or whatever. You got to get one of those apps. And you really need a scale. You need a scale for your kitchen. Now, this blows a lot of people's minds. Like, oh God, this is just weighing my whole life down. Now I got to have a scale and I got to be weighing food. It's really not that big a deal. My scale is right there on the counter in my kitchen. Everything I eat that I need to weigh, I just plop it right on it. It literally takes 10 seconds. And then I just pop it into MyFitnessPal. Normally I do the opposite. Normally I'll go into MyFitnessPal and I'm planning out my food a day in advance. And I talk about that in other episodes of the podcast about how to succeed, you really need to know today what you're going to eat tomorrow. That way you're setting yourself up for success instead of failure. But if I know tomorrow that I'm going to eat, 75 grams of chicken breast for lunch, and I've already got it in MyFitnessPal, well, when tomorrow comes and it's time to make lunch, I'm going to pull the chicken out, I'm going to put it on the scale until it hits 75 grams, and then I'm going to cook it up. And it literally takes like 10 seconds. You just put your little container on there, plop, plop. And the scales are really cheap. You can get you a very nice, decent digital kitchen scale on Amazon for $10-15. I ordered one time that was $9 and used it for 2 years. I actually put it back in the back of one of my counters in the kitchen because it still works. I just wanted a different one. And I think the new one I bought, I paid like $18 for it or something. Nevertheless, they're really cheap. You need a scale and you need MyFitnessPal, okay? So you get the chicken and you need to weigh the chicken out. Now, if you'll do my method of going into MyFitnessPal for tomorrow and laying your meals out ahead of time, you get to see the grams of protein you're hitting. You can up the chicken, down the chicken, up the veggies, down the veggies, up the whatever has the fat in it or down it or to see what the carbs are. And you can plan each meal out until when the day is over, you have hit your macros just like you want. That you've got your 169 grams of protein and you've kept your carbs 80 or less and the rest of it is made up of fat and you've got it. So then when tomorrow comes, it's just a matter of seeing what weight amounts it took for the chicken and what weight it took for your broccoli or asparagus or whatever it is you're eating and what weight it took for this, that, and the other. And then you just plop it on that scale and weigh it out and you're done. You're good to go. It really is easy. It sounds like a lot of work, but look, you're talking about weight loss, a sustainable lifestyle, and your health forever. It's not that big a deal. So that's number one, right? You got to use something that shows you how much grams of protein you're hitting. Else you're just pissing in the wind. You don't know the difference. So how do you implement this, right? Your general thoughts on keto is you're hitting a fat goal first. Second, you're hitting a carb goal. And then last, protein just falls in there somewhere. When you're eating a high protein version of low carb / keto, however you want to look at it, and I would proffer to you that this is yet another modified version of keto. Every version of keto that isn't therapeutic for cancer or seizures is a modified keto. There is no pure keto for weight loss. It's just something somebody modified and came up with. Pure keto is for therapeutic reasons. It was a diet invented, 100 years ago for seizures, and then it has been used here of late in cancers, and it's a very super high fat content. Nobody losing weight on keto is eating an actual keto diet. They're eating a modified version of the keto diet. So when somebody that tells you got to keep your protein moderate to low or else you're not doing keto, tell them to shut up. Tell them they have modified the keto diet, or whoever told them about it modified it, and it can be modified in several ways, and that you're eating a different modified version, a high protein modified version. So you want to hit your protein goal first. So when you're punching your numbers in and punching your food into MyFitnessPal, you want to be finagling the weights and amounts and the kinds of. You want to be putting that in there where you can know in advance that you're going to be hitting those numbers, right? So that you can see them and understand them and know in advance that you're going to hit them. So That is a very, very important step in the whole process, hitting that protein goal first. Then you want to be looking at the carbs and making sure that they're 80 or less. Now, some days you can do 100 or less. You may even have a day where you're doing 120 carbs or something, depending on what that depends on is how much time you're putting between meals. If you are putting like at least a 16-8 intermittent fasting regimen in there, you may be able to eat the 80 to 100 carb range. If you're only hitting a 14-hour or 12-hour intermittent fast, which is barely intermittent fasting at all, you're probably going to need to eat a lot less carbs. You probably 50 or less. If you're doing a one meal a day type thing, you can probably get away with a few more carbs because you're putting a lot of time between meals. Nevertheless, generally speaking, 80 carbs or less is a pretty good target. And if you're doing a decent intermittent fasting regimen with 80 carbs or less, you're probably going to be okay. You'll probably find yourself in ketosis a good portion of the time, if not 100% of the time, 75-80% of the time, which is a fine for a weight loss goal. And then last comes the fat, and you want the fats in there. You want healthy fats in there. You just don't want your diet to be 80% fat. So one little tip about what it should look like when you look at your final macros in MyFitnessPal or whatever app you choose to look at. When you look at your grams of protein, whatever your total grams of protein are, your fat and carbs should add up to that same amount or less. So let's say that your goal was 170 grams of protein for the day. Well, when you add your carbs and your fat grams together, they should not add up to more than 170. It should be 1-to-1. The number of protein grams you have should be equal to or higher, preferably higher, than the carb grams plus fat grams added together. Okay? So that's called 1-to-1. You actually want to get up in the 1.25 or 1.5 range. So 1.1 is the minimum. That's the minimum you should ever strive for, but you really should try to go higher than that, because the higher you go, the more satiated you're going to be, the more muscle mass you're going to be retaining. It's even going to help you to build the muscle mass if you're doing some kind of resistance. So always keep that in mind, all right? Divide the protein up into at least 2 meals or 3 meals. Now, even if you're doing Omad, right? Omad isn't just sitting down and having a plate of food. I mean, some people do it that way, but generally speaking, Omad is eaten in about an hour window, maybe a 90-minute window. Okay, so for about an hour or hour and a half out of the day, you're probably going to have like a smaller meal and a bigger meal, or 2 equal-sized meals or something. But you're going to be fitting them into an hour to an hour and a half, right? So you want to divide your protein up into at least 2 meals. If you're doing 16-8, then you probably can easily get in 3 meals. You may be doing 3 meals. Divide your protein up between however many meals you're doing. Divide it equally between 2 meals or 3 meals or whatever, with this goal in mind. You should never have a meal that has less than 40 grams of protein ever. And I think if you have your protein numbers right, that'd be pretty impossible, but just keep it in mind. You should never eat a meal that has less than 40 grams of protein in it. And finally, if you're going to do some kind of resistance training, or you're going to do HIIT training or something like that, you want to do it between meals so that you have put protein into your body before it, and then you've also got protein coming after it. And you want to put that workout or whatever close to the meal coming after, within 30 minutes of the meal coming after. So let's say that you ate a meal at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and then you're eating your next meal at 4. Well, you want to finish up your workout at like 3:30, 30 minutes before that 4 o'clock meal. You want about a 30-minute window between your workout and your next meal, okay? But always put your workouts between 2 meals. How are you going to get all this protein in? Well, you're going to be doing eggs and egg whites. Egg whites are amazing. You can buy them in cartons at the grocery store. They're relatively inexpensive. And I find that if I'm doing like a an omelet or something, like I'll use 1 egg and then I'll do like another 2 eggs worth of just egg whites, and it really kicks that protein level up. You can do non-fat, non-sugar Greek yogurt, Fage. It's pronounced Fage, but it's spelled Fage. Their 0% Greek yogurt is really good for that. It really helps if you will put some good protein powders into your diet. It helps you get it up there. Now, you shouldn't be eating all your protein from protein powders. They're just a supplement. Most of these good protein powders have about 25 grams per scoop. If you do one of those with your first meal and one of them with your second meal, you've added about 50 grams, which really, gets you up there closer to hitting your protein goals from eating the actual food. Lean chicken breast, grilled, roasted chicken breast, pan-seared chicken breast is a really high form of protein. You're going to find that most of your protein is going to be a lot of chicken. That being said, if you're a sausage person, getting you some turkey sausage, the fat is much lower in that and the protein is much higher, so that helps. That's probably my biggest tips. Like my lunch, for example, may be 9 ounces of grilled lean chicken, a protein shake, which is about just 25 grams of protein there, and a salad with some with two cut up boiled eggs in it, and just a little bit of cheese. That's probably a reasonable salad. I would look at my protein levels and see what I needed to do, adjust from there, and I might work in more or less protein, but that's kind of a good idea of constructing a meal. So the one last thing I'd say about protein powders is, first of all, you want a protein powder that's made from whey protein isolate. You don't want I think it's called complete protein, whey protein or something. It's got to be whey protein isolate. You could also do a hydrolyzed isolate. That's a little bit faster absorbing version of isolate, but whey protein isolate is what you're looking for. And then you want one of the companies that makes the 0 carb version. My favorite is Isopure. It's kind of pricey. A new one I've been trying, which is cheaper than Isopure, is called Dymatize ISO 100. If you want to search on Amazon for it, it's ISO-100, and the name brand is Dymatize. I think it's Dymatize. I'm sorry, my brain is shorting out on me, but I believe it's something like that, Dynamitez or something like that. But they have 0 carbs or very low carbs, like 1 or 2 carbs a scoop max. 0 or 1 or 2 carbs a scoop max is what you're looking for. So those will help you get your protein in. I'll tell you, for breakfast, one of the coolest things you can do for breakfast, or as a pre-meal snack or something, is get that Fage 0%, no sugar, Greek yogurt, real Greek yogurt. Put you a serving of that in a bowl, and then take a scoop of your favorite flavor, that whey protein isolate, and mix it in there with it so it flavors it up, and it'll actually sweeten it up too. And boy, that's so good. I had that today, actually. Very high protein. And if you want to use that along with a egg, let's say you do an egg omelet with egg and whatever else you put in your omelet, just do 1 egg and then 2 eggs worth of egg white, so it's mostly egg white, and whatever else you put in there, and then have you some turkey sausage with it, and then also have you this yogurt with this protein scoop in it. Boy, that's a high protein, high feeling breakfast that will keep you filled and satisfied for hours. So that's just one or 2 ideas to give you some idea of how you can make it work. I hope that what we've talked about has helped you in some way. We're coming up on 30 minutes, so I'm going to shut this thing down. Just let me remind you, if you like what we do and you want to consider becoming a patron so that you don't hear ads, and by the way, I appreciate your patience with the ads. I know they're annoying, but you don't know what it means to me to have the cost of the podcast offset by them. So thank you for putting up with them. If you hate them enough, you can become a patron, and I'll give you a bunch of other perks. You'll get the podcast 4 days earlier. It'll be a lot shorter without all these ads and garbage in it. There'll be no fluff in it. You'll go to the front of the line for asking me questions. The podcast is hosted on the Patreon platform where you can comment on each one and we can have a discussion if you'd like. So if you want to know what all the benefits to that are, losewithmason.com. Losewithmason.com is the address. And please consider subscribing to us on social media. Fasting Guy Podcast. Fasting Guy Podcast is what you search for. And consider giving us a rating on Apple Podcast. A 5-star with a few words about what you like means the world to me. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.